Hello, everyone. As Nidhi mentioned, my name is Brijesh. I have 3 decades plus, little plus of experience in the world of information technology. I've spent 60% of my professional career working for services organizations, consulting services organizations. Predominantly, most of the time of the 60% of my professional life has been spent with a company called Deloitte Consulting. I was a partner managing director there before I came on board with Wipro. I was with Wipro for a little over a year. Recently, we separated and parted ways. And in the last 8 to 9 years, since beginning of 2016, end of 2015, I jumped on the bandwagon on the spectrum of artificial intelligence, primarily enabling automation for various businesses across Fortune 500, Global 2000 organizations. In that process, I have learned a lot. I've learned how automation is impacting the future of work, how automation is changing consumer behavior, how automation is impacting what new roles and responsibilities and jobs that are coming out that we didn't even know about a decade ago. And I also learned that how we all have to reconsider the way we run our businesses, regardless of what that business is. It could be a mom and pop shop selling groceries, or it could be a large retail chain, or a drug manufacturer, or a heavy engineering manufacturing industry, or a services company. Regardless, the way we conduct our business is changing. The tools and techniques on the AI spectrum are forcing us to change that. So today, I'm here to share with you my understanding of how that is changing, how that is shifting, and what impact it would have on our work, whether you are graduating from colleges today and tomorrow, or even those individuals who are in the workforce today, and how they would have to adapt to this changing need and accordingly plan their careers ahead. Is that fair? Nivedan, Nidhi?
Absolutely.
Okay. How do you allow questions to be coming in between, or should I just complete my thought process and then at the end we take questions?
I think it would be better if we complete the session first and then open up for Q&A so that, we go on uninterrupted.
Okay, wonderful. Can I proceed? So, in my humble opinion, these are the three major areas of impact that I see, and many of my colleagues also who are working with me across various organizations in the enabling the impact of AI across various lines of businesses are also foreseeing this. The three areas are business services for the organization, any organization, information services. I intentionally did not write information technology services. It's information services, which includes information technology, and our way of life, how we live today. If you are a Gen Zer or an Alpha generation, you're already observing how your way of life is different from a millennial or a Gen Xer like me, right? And you would hear terms like floppy disks and compact disks and VCRs, and those terms are foreign and alien to you if you belong to the Gen Z or Alpha generation. So business services, the way AI is influencing business services, there are certain industry that I mentioned. So think about it, how a business is conducted, right? Any business. You have a product or which is a tangible product, or you have a product that is an intangible product, like you're in banking, then you do not make something that you touch and feel, but you have products that you offer, like a mortgage loan or a car loan, anything like that. If you're a manufacturing company, like you make phones or toothpaste or toothbrushes, then you make a product. So organizations like that offer either a service or offer tangible products. In the process, they do R&D, they design their product, they consume some raw materials to make that product, and then they sell their product to their customers and they service their customers. This is a typical business model of any and every organization, right? Now, in this process, there are human beings that come in and perform various tasks. If I take a simple example of manufacturing, for example, then in a manufacturing process, you're procuring raw materials based on the R&D performed and the product that is going to be manufactured. Now, when you're procuring the raw material, you have various companies that you can go to procure raw materials. Now, the way artificial intelligence is impacting the entire supply chain process is significant. Today, in the limited databases that we have, structural content that we process, we go in and we look at through queries, we research as individuals, as supply chain personnel, and we found out company X that is located in region A provides me this good that I require to procure. Then company Y that is in region P is also giving me the same goods. Then I, as a human, am making the decision between N different companies in M different locations, providing the same good at different prices. And I'm also estimating the cost of transportation if I have to bear with the cost of transportation. And believe me, this is happening today, that humans mostly are making some of these decisions on where do I go to procure that good that I need. Now, the way artificial intelligence is going to change that is a human doesn't have to make that decision. And AI can make that decision that which company should I go to procure what good at what price, which is the most optimal price. And not only that, an AI can go ahead and place an order. AI can go ahead and receive the good that is being received. So think about it. I just gave you a small example of how AI is influencing in the job that is being performed in one aspect of a supply chain process that I just gave you an example of, where I mentioned only about relational data that is sitting in relational databases, which human was querying and human was making the decision. And with the application of statistical algorithms, now the automated artificial intelligence systems can do that job. So in this scenario, when business services are getting impacted, where automation is creating digital labor and digital workforce, then how the jobs of those individuals who are performing these jobs today will be impacted in the future. Whether you are a bank teller, whether you are a customer service representative, whether you are a scheduler of a shift operation, whether you are a nursing assistant, whether you are a radiologist that reads x-rays, all of these roles in various different aspects of businesses, how they will change. So one area is that in what is needed when we work with these AI models are not 100% accurate 100% of the time. So the one thing that is needed mostly from humans is to teach them who and what kind of human will be able to teach these models in the most effective manner. Think about it. Those humans that have that knowledge and understanding of those business functions to the excruciating details, those are the ones that will be able to teach these AI models on a continuum. You probably would have heard the term human in the loop, right? Or reinforcement learning with human factor. So these terms are becoming very, very important. So business domain knowledge and business domain expertise of whatever job you are in are going to become increasingly important. And the role of that individual will shift a little. So, as to performing all the activities of their given task, their role will change into performing some activities on the task, but making sure that the machine, which is artificial intelligence system here, is performing a larger portion of these activities, A. B, performing these activities in the most accurate and acceptable manner without adversely impacting the consequences. And there would be times when human lives would be at stake, when litigation would be at stake, that somebody can, sue me or my organization if I did not address the problem appropriately. I have to pay millions, billions of dollars in fine if I did not follow the process accurately. So governance will become an important aspect of that human's role. I'll give you another example. Um, Today, a gastroenterologist conducts a process called colonoscopy, in which they put a camera inside your colon and intestine, and they look for signs of any uneven growth in your internal organs in the body, in small intestines, large intestines, colons, etc. Now, when they are doing that, it's a human, that physician, that gastroenterologist, that is evaluating that. Now, some thought that AI could do that job and eliminate the job of that physician. No. Now, the doctors are using AI systems that are in that real time, while a physician has the camera inside our body and running the process of colonoscopy, an AI system is also seeing those images and those videos. These AI systems have been trained with millions and millions, in some cases billions, of images that have been scanned earlier. And they are also evaluating and giving their diagnosis and treatment. Now, I have discussed with few doctors and I have concluded, this is what they have shared with me, that there are times when the physician with their naked eye miss a few of those cases and AI captures it. Whereas there have been times when AI misses some of those images and the physician captures it. So it's a complementary, it's a cohabited situation that both the physician and the machine are living together. So that's how I personally see the evolution of roles and responsibilities of humans in regardless of what job they are doing. Those jobs are not going away. Those jobs are getting augmented and the responsibility is increasing. There'll be more and more regulations. At the beginning of this webinar, I was having a dialogue with Nivedan, and this is the dialogue we were having, that there would be newer compliance policies that would come in, newer regulations that are coming in. You probably would have heard about European Union Act that they put in place. Biden last year had announced certain guidelines for regulations in United States, and more of those we will see as we go into the future. I'll switch to information services, where information services, if I concentrate on the word technology for a moment, think about that, how the flow of information with the information technology paradigm that enabled mankind in the last 50 to 70 years. It was all about information is sitting in in some entity relationship format in some relational databases, and with the use of structured query language and some programming language with some format, regardless of what that language is, C, Java, Python, doesn't matter. We were able to procure that information, get that information, and conduct the business that we were conducting. That helped us move the business forward at a speed that we weren't able to 60, 70 years, 80 years ago, right? That is changing. How that is changing? Because think about it, what we did. We gathered the requirements of individual users, whether it was a physician, whether it was a customer service agent, whether it was a research engineer, a shop floor mechanic, doesn't matter which industry this individual was and what their job was. We try to understand what their job is. And then we try to understand how we can help them with their job, right? With the information coming in. We created those computer systems by writing, by first understanding their job, then translating their job into what we call functional specifications. And then someone who would understand computer language would take those functional specifications and convert them into technical specifications. Then either the same individual or a different person, a developer, would take that and write the code so that the computer system can understand that and then interact with a database to perform the activities that we needed to. Now, in the new world of artificial intelligence, particularly with generative artificial intelligence, where I can provide the same business requirement and functional specification in the form of prompt, the artificial intelligence system, known as a large language model, can return back to me lines of codes that I could have, would have, should have written, even tested for me, right? So, and even deployed for me. So the process, as a matter of fact, they can even create those functional specifications and technical specifications. So now the role in the process of information services is also changing, right? The role is changing in the manner that the engineer whose job was to write the code, now the job is changing to evaluate the code that is coming from the machine. Because in at least distant future that I see, a machine would not be able to put out 100% accurate code. In maybe 10 years from now, I don't want to put any number there, but in some time ahead, it might be able to, but at least not today. So the role is changing, and even in the near future tomorrow. So the role is changing. So the engineer now has to, instead of writing the code from scratch, has to evaluate the code that the machine has given and then fix the issues coming with that and teach the machine that in the next iteration how it is going to do that. So as I was saying, same thing is applicable here. The way business personnel job is becoming more and more of a teacher, a guide, and a QA and a governance individual. Similarly, in information services, the role of an engineer, software or a hardware engineer, is also changing in a similar direction. The role is becoming of a guide, a teacher, and a quality analyzer, an evaluator, and a fixer, if you will, right? So that role is expanding in certain areas and shrinking in other areas. So that shift is happening as we are moving ahead. But the role is not going away. Not at all. The role is not going away. The role is changing as we get. Way of life. The way of life, the way I see is how we live our life today. For example, the change that in recent years that have happened in all our lives, which many of you on the call are familiar with, we used to go when in my father's generation, anytime you had to pay the bill, you had to go to a physical location to pay the bill for that service that you were consuming. In my generation, I didn't have to go any place to pay the bill. I paid the bill by writing a check in a mail and then put it in the mailbox, and the bill was paid. Then in my generation, I started observing I didn't even have to do that. Now I could pay the bill using online services. I could log into my computer, whether it's a laptop, a desktop, or a smart device, and I could pay my bill. Then it graduated into I don't even have to pay my bill. For all the services that I consume, I can set up something known as auto pay, and the bill will be automatically deducted if I allow that, right? So, all this evolution we have seen in our own lifetime. Our way of life has changed. Now, the more it's going to change is that certain services, I give an example. So, say artificial intelligence system is employed in a drug that I consume, right? And that drug, there is an IoT device that is installed on that box where I take a pill a day for, I don't know, whatever disease I have, diabetes, hypertension, regardless of some of these chronic ailments, I take some medicine every day. So the IoT device that is there is evaluating, say, the weight that is decreasing when I take the pill out. And when the weight decreases, then it collects that information. And we are in a connected world. We live in the wireless environment or cellular environment. It is connected, IoT device. It sends that information to a server sitting on the cloud, which processes that. And once it processes that, it knows that I have taken the drug. Now, when I did not take the drug, for argument's sake, the weight did not go down. So that information was not received by the server. When server did not receive it, guess what would happen? The server can send me a notification saying, Mr. Singh, you missed taking your drug today. So a notification came on my phone, and now I'm taking the drug, right? Another example is I have a refrigerator, which is AI enabled, and say the weight of the milk bottle is low. I don't have certain vegetables in my fridge, etc., etc. I get a notification, and on my way back home, I can buy those stuff. Or the notification doesn't even come to me. The notification goes to the grocery store where I regularly go to, and I have a relationship with them, and I have a connected service with them where they can buy those stuff and send it and deliver it to my home. So when I come home, this stuff is sitting. By the way, they also know the time, or I can send them information that I'm reaching home at 5:30 in the evening. So it doesn't sit out on my doorstep for long and goes bad. The stuff is arriving at the same time when I'm arriving, so that I can come home and cook the meal that I wanted to cook based on the ingredients that I now have, which I didn't have in the refrigerator. So these are the ways our way of life is going to change, or already changing, and more as we increasingly apply the tools and techniques that are available to us on the spectrum of artificial intelligence. I think we can move ahead. I try to keep a little bit broad and try to go deep as well. Let's move ahead a little bit and think about some of the paradigm shift in the business services. I gave you some examples, and I'm going to continue to give more examples of how certain other roles, future of work that will get impacted in the business areas. So the first one that comes to my mind is reimagine business processes. And this is a program that I did, in a recent time, where there's an insurance company, and that insurance company receives the emails from their members who subscribe to insurance policies in a central location. The mails come in, and when the mails come in, there is a central location where there are a group of human beings who sit together and they sort out these mails, And when they sort out these mails, they categorize the mails based on this is for auto, this is for life, this is for disability, this is for home insurance, various kinds of, or even within auto, various kinds of claims, right? Trucks have different, cars have different, two-wheelers have different insurance. So when that classification is done by human beings, and then these are dispersed to the different groups where different claim processors are going to process these claims. That was the existing process. When we applied automation, combination of AI and some non-AI techniques that we put together, we reimagined the business process that these mails that come into this organization, do we need a group of human beings to do that classification? Because now artificial intelligence is enabling classification. You can classify because artificial intelligence techniques are advanced to process natural languages thanks to the BERT technique, the bidirectional encoding and representation of transformers, the transformer paper that Google wrote in 2017. And that architecture now is used in all natural language processing, not even natural language processing, but image processing and audio processing and video processing, where attention mechanism is being used by computer scientists, leveraging that technique to think about a new way of processing languages, where earlier it was only about appending what would be the next word in the chain in a sequence of words that was coming in. And now the thought process is you have to look at the context of the entire sentence or sentences or paragraph or paragraphs or entire document. And then based on that, you predict what the next word is going to be. And that's how generative AI came into being, that based on the learning of the various degrees of information and knowledge that was trained to these modern systems, it captured all the probabilities and it has stored all the probabilities. And when it predicts, it based on the learning that it has, it can create the based on the probability, it can produce the output when you ask a question. And you would have also noticed working with these new modern Gen AI systems that when it produces the output is not the same all the time. It is because of the probabilities that it has stored. There is variation in the probabilities. So depending on the variation in your questions, or depending on how it is interpreting it, it is producing different outputs, though similar in nature, but different at times. So the transformer architecture has evolved significantly, now enabling us to reimagine these business processes to be done in a different way. So the example that I started with, now the classification of these natural language written emails, whichever language they were written in, French, English, German, Hindi, regardless, can be processed and classified in those categories for this insurance company, what kind of insurance, what kind of damage, what kind of vehicle, and then appropriately not only sent to the human claims processors and adjudicators, but also can be processed on an automated manner by artificial intelligence systems to a large degree. Now, where the human roles come into play, the role of a claims processor and adjudicator, etc., again, as I said, not going away. Their role is A, to teach the AI system, because nobody else knows that business process better than I or you if we are the claims processor. At the same time, continually monitor the false negatives and the false positives coming out of the computer systems and understand that where the inaccuracies are and then process those inaccuracies. At the same time, as I said, the newer regulations and newer compliances are coming in. So ensure that there is an effective execution and implementation of newer regulations, and you become the guardian of that. So the role is increasing in certain areas and role is decreasing in certain areas. But the role is not going away as I see it. And more importance in having that knowledge of that business process increases in the new business architecture, which is a very interesting business architecture. Business architecture earlier was humans, computer systems, and then everything else. Now there is humans, computer systems, and then at the same time, there's a third tier that is being added, which is digital labor. And digital labor is taking two forms with the application of AI. One form is physical labor is also being taken up by the digital labor, as well as the mental labor. So when I perform certain mental labor by sitting in front of my computer and doing some processing or writing or reading or then writing, these can be done by the newer models. They are known as AI agents. So you probably would have heard the term action models or agentic systems, and large action models and agent models are coming into play. A network of agents can come in and even decide how to distribute the workload across agents. There could be a supervisor agent that can pass on the work to a subordinate agent and coordinate the work that is to be done by other agent, complete that work before it goes back to the previous agent. Similarly, a human is there in the loop across all these agentic systems. These agentic systems, to a large degree, are going to cohabit with the humans with certain dependencies. And humans will have to continue to work in training and coaching them. So the example that I gave to you, that the third architecture that is coming in is of this agentic world, digital labor world in both human mental labor as well as human physical labor. Physical labor, you all are familiar with the shop floors where the robots are coming in and on the assembly line and doing things. Imagine the world. I mean, this is happening today in Japan and various other places where robots are substituting human even companionship to some degree. Will they completely take away the human relationship we have? My opinion is probably never, because the inner connection that we establish, the one thing that machines can not do is the emotional aspects of humans, that the way we touch and feel and imagine and behave based on our gut, what we call gut. And those are the areas how we ascertain certain things. And we have tried, we have taken the images of how our billions and billions of neurons in our human brain are interlinked. That's how we created the neural networks in the computer systems, that modeling on that. But the behavioral aspect, the emotional aspect, the sensory, other sensory aspects of human beings, those are not yet replicated, duplicated in a computer systems. The term you probably hear is AGI, the artificial general intelligence. I don't know how far is that in the distance, but who knows? We may never achieve that. That's where I see that human and machines will cohabit, live together, and collaborate with each other to continue to make the world a place where we are breathing cleaner air, we are consuming more organic, less harmful food, highly nutrient food, and living a more comfortable life. That's how I see it. Moving ahead. And Nidhi, please let me know how much time do I have?
Brijesh, you have around 15 to 20 minutes more.
This is for the Q&A only, or
This is just for the presentation. Once you're done with that, we can then start the Q&A. So after 20 minutes, we can start the Q&A.
okay, got it. So some additional areas where I wanted to emphasize on and bring some examples. Those are, I kind of gave you some examples in software development lifecycle and DevOps processes, how they are evolving and changing. Uh, I'll give you an example on the software as a service, which is evolving to task as a service. I kind of touched upon that a little bit. So think about it how we consume many of the um, software service applications today. Um, doesn't matter which company it is, without naming any. Uh, from first decade of the new millennium, we started using software as a service where many organizations, instead of giving the software for us to be installed and deployed within our four boundary walls on our own premises, uh, they are now operating in somewhere in the cloud. And then we consume them through network. And then through network, we get the service and we execute the business transaction that we want to execute, but we still pay for that service. And there are two ways we pay for the service. One way we pay for the service is we pay whatever licensing fee that company asks us to pay for that software that we are consuming to perform the business function that we are performing. Let's say the business function we are performing is um, patient registration in a hospital system. I'm just picking one example. And for that business function, there is a software that I'm consuming that is sitting somewhere in the cloud. But my hospital administrators, nurses, doctors, they all use that, right? And then I'm paying for that. I'm also paying for the network that I have used, or maybe that is bundled in the service. And since it is running in a cloud somewhere, I'm consuming. There are only three kinds of cloud services which you all consume, right? Either we pay for the storage if we are putting our data and our software in the cloud, whatever we store in the cloud, then we pay for that for the storage. Second thing we pay for is the pipe, the network, the bandwidth that we consume. So we pay for that. And the third thing that we pay for is when we are doing any processing, computation, calculation, any processing, reading, writing, then we pay for the computational services. So the compute resources. These are the cloud resources that we pay for. Now, the licensing model, in my humble opinion, is evolving. Think about it, the software that we consume today, uh, the language models that I discussed earlier, the concept called prompt engineering that allows us to say certain thing to the language model, either speak or type, and then get the answer. So if I want it to um, create a system that would take a patient in and register that patient, I can create that by talking to a language model, right? If I can create that by talking to a language model, why would I buy that service from somebody and pay X dollars every month or every year just to use that service, right? So, in my humble opinion, that software as a service model is rapidly changing into task as a service. Now, so many of these organizations will probably gravitate and start offering their services as a concept of a task. So if you register a patient, then you pay me something, whatever you pay me. I'm not going to charge you a flat fee for using my software. But only when you register a patient, then you pay me maybe a rupee, a penny, a nickel, a dime, whatever you want to pay me, right? Or the other way they can ask is that you only pay me when you use my service and you consume the three cloud resources, the network, the storage, and the compute. When you use those, you pay me. If you didn't use those, you don't pay me. Or a combination of the two, right? So that's how I see the evolution is happening. So the roles that are coming in the world of, I did not talk about the roles of generative AI and AI. that did not exist before. So, few years back, many of us did not even know this terminology called prompt engineering. Now, uh, millions actually of jobs are getting created for prompt engineers. Millions of jobs are getting created for human in the loop engineers. These jobs did not exist before. In the entire ecosystem of artificial intelligence, particularly generative artificial intelligence, if you look at the three-tiered architecture, where there is a model somewhere, and then you have to have appropriate method to access and use the model. And then eventually at the third tier is what you created as the output when you, from the middle tier, you reach to the model, which is called an application, right? An AI application. In this three-tier architecture, an AI application, methods, techniques, tools, middle pathways to reach and use the model, and eventually model at the bottom. There are so many different roles and jobs that have come out. Let me talk about the role between the model and the usage of the model. So today's model is something that we all, as you all are knowledgeable of artificial intelligence systems, are not something that you can directly use as a business user. You have to work with that. And there are various ways to work with that. You probably would have heard the term, you have to fine tune the model. You have to train the model. Uh, you have to contextualize the model. So fine tuning a model meaning I can change the parameters of the model or the weights and the biases of the model. Weights and biases are nothing but the training that has been given with the billions of tokens. Tokens are nothing but the parts of the words of the sentences or the pictures that or the videos or the audios that the models have been trained with. And how do you adjust the the probabilities of those parameters, of those weights? How do you adjust those weights? Which weights you want to carry forward for your usage? Which weights you want to have more emphasis on for your usage? Then these models are big, huge, massive. The training costs a lot when you use the GPUs, the TPUs, the NPUs, the processing compute chips that are needed to use them. Then how do you reduce the size of these models so that you can use them in the more effective manner with increased accuracy without incurring the huge cost of inference? Inference is when you go to the model to asking the model to do something for you, give you an information, right? So quantization is a technique that you apply when you reduce the size, say from a 32-bit model to a 16 or a 4-bit or an 8-bit model and so on. I'm getting into some technical domains. So there are roles and responsibilities that come into play of various kinds of engineers who are now having these tasks, which were never there. You probably would have heard of a technique called retrieval augmented generation, where you as a business do not want your data to go someplace in the cloud and continue to incur high cost of fine tuning or training a model. You want to build your own knowledge repository of your data, uh, whether it's a graph database or whether it's a vector database, regardless of that. And there are different needs for these two types of databases. You use the techniques of retrieval augmented generation, popularly known as RAG, and you use some open source frameworks like LangChain, for example, to work with these models. And that's the middle tier, the RAG, to create the AI applications or AI systems, whether it's an AI agent or whatnot. So these roles did not exist today, and they exist today. This is the evolution that we are seeing. And they are now the requirement is not in thousands, but in millions across the world, because every organization will be using a set of one or many models for their business needs, because we all know as data scientists that one model will not be able to most likely, meet the need of all my business services that I have, use cases that I have, because nature of the data determines the outcome coming from a model. So maybe two, three, four, five models will suffice for an organization for 50, 100, 200 different business use cases that they may have. And governance, these are the various kinds of roles that are coming in that did not exist yesterday, but they're there today, continually evolving. So I'm very positive. And on that note, I will stop and see questions from you all.
Thank you, Brijesh. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. And I hope everyone loved it. If you loved the session, please drop crazy in the chat. Right. We are getting a lot of positive feedback from the audience. So we'll open up the session for Q&A now. If you guys have any questions, now is the time to ask. You can raise the hand or drop your questions in the chat box, and we can pick that up from there. So there is one comment which is asking, the question is by Rohit. He's asking, would love to hear your take on the next steps of AI, particularly AI agents and their use in our workflows.
Thank you, Rohit. AI agents are, again, in my opinion, not new. The only thing is that now there is a conversation about having a world where there are a group of AI agents working in tandem with a supervisor agent, where they may be able to execute the entire workflow with full independence without any human intervention. Did we create AI agents 5 years ago, 7 years ago, with full independence to execute a transaction? Answer is yes. Even before generative AI came into our lives, I have executed programs where we have created conversational systems leveraging traditional machine learning techniques and concepts of automation. So discriminative AI and applying certain functions of basic software development lifecycle and DevOps techniques. We built AI systems to take human inputs and complete the transaction. If there was a human query, answer the question. If a human wanted to apply for a loan, apply for the loan. If a human wanted to make a payment, make a payment. All those things have been done in the past, right? So AI-enabled automated systems have executed a task in its entirety in the past. Now the question is that, as you talked about, a workflow is nothing but how different steps of a task flows through in the decision-making process and then executes the ultimate goal. The task could be a 3-step process or a 300-step process. With agentic systems, what we are talking about, and in those 300-step process, there could be multiple places where humans have to provide checks and evaluate. And we are saying that when we build these agentic systems, the AI agents would be the ones who could potentially be the evaluator and checker, and then QA and pass from one stage to another stage and pass to another AI agent so that they can take up the next set of steps and complete their process. Then another check could be performed by another AI agent, and so on. That is the evolution that we are looking going forward in.
Thank you, Brijesh, for the detailed explanation. Another question is from Mohammed. He is asking, what is your view of AI in medical devices?
So that is a very broad question. My view on AI in medical devices, I gave you an example. of how a gastroenterologist who is conducting an exam called colonoscopy is using artificial intelligence system real time while conducting that experiment in that evaluation with a camera inside the human body where AI system is also integrated in that machine. And in that integrated machine, AI system is also looking at the same images that the doctor is looking at and producing its diagnosis simultaneously at the same time while the doctor is diagnosing. And then the doctor, as a human, ultimate human agent here, or the decision maker, consumes both his or her own diagnosis plus AI's diagnosis and gives the final diagnosis to the patient in concern. So there is one example that I gave earlier that how there are various thousands of examples of how medical devices are using artificial intelligence systems.
The initial question that you answered, there's a follow-up question to that by Rohit again. How would one create guardrails in these systems to ensure there are lesser hallucinations and don't break policies while doing their work?
So, Rohit, why do hallucinations happen, right? So, fundamental question is that. And the fundamental question goes back on how these systems have been trained. And when they have been trained, what is it that there is? And let's say I'll take an example of an LLM, a large language model, where you train it with billions of tokens of information available wherever, from the internet, from Wikipedias, etc. Now, they store probabilities, right? So when you ask a question, any question that, where does the sun rise? And the answer is simple, that sun rises in the east. So of hundreds of thousands of sentences that it has read, it comes back and the system gives you the answer that the sun rises in the east. Now, when you use this system and go a little bit deeper and ask other questions, then at times there is a behavior, because system is based on the probabilities, it is creating answers for you. There is a behavior that is known as emergence, where it can create an answer where if your question is not easily understandable by the system and written in an ambiguous manner, so it doesn't really know based on its learning, it creates an answer that may not be the accurate answer. And it's creating based on the probabilities of the information that it has been trained with. So that's where it hallucinates. Now, more information that you have trained with, that's why the systems now are trained with not just 70, 80, but 300, 400 billions of tokens, the lesser the probability of hallucination, right? But again, these are massive systems where the training cost increasingly, goes up. At the same time, when you're unable to use them in your business context because you still have to either fine tune, retrain, or use RAG to contextualize for your own purposes. Now, how do you put the guardrails is where RAG and other techniques come into play. Even techniques like distillation, sparsity, or quantization assist in providing those guardrails, where there is a technique called there are certain parameters, PEFT, where certain parameters are fixed, and only those parameters where you want to influence the weights, you only move those forwards. There is LoRa, the low rank adaptation technique. There is QLoRa, the quantized low rank adaptation technique that is also applied, where you only view those weights and measure those weights that you want to impact on, and you reduce the matrices by reducing the rank. So if you use the lower rank, instead of example would be a 3x3 matrix would can be converted into a 1x1 or a 3x1, and the net output of a combination of 1 by 1 and a 3 by 1 will be significantly less compared to a 3 by 3 matrix, right? So that way that we have reduced the size, and you have still maintained the integrity of the information of the weights to some degree. So the model will not hallucinate even though it reduced in size. By applying RAG, and there are two-step process in the RAG. First, based on your own data, you create a store, and during the inference cycle, when you have a query, a prompt coming in, you first go to your own store, pull the information, retrieve that information, augment your query, and then you go to the model, and then model gives you the better answer because it is contextualized and it is augmented. So there are various techniques that, and much more. I'm just giving you some preliminary examples on how you apply these guardrails to minimize the risk of inaccuracy or hallucination that go on in these models. Are they 100% proof? My answer is not yet, but that's where human in the loop come in. Reinforcement learning with human factor, they come in. And these are the things that are continually applied to improve the performance.
Okay, so there's one question by Divyesh, and to an extent, there's a similar question by Dhruv as well, which I've summarized. They're asking for a student, what exact actions can they take today to be more adaptable to AI in their career? Can you give some actionable steps?
What my question is that what is that student studying? Are you studying philosophy? Are you studying engineering? What is it that you're studying? Depends on what you're studying. There are different ways I can answer that question.
Broadly, can you answer it for two things, tech and non-tech?
I have already answered that at the beginning of my conversation, where I explained to you that what is the impact on the business roles and what's the impact on the engineering role. In the last few minutes, I kind of explained also the impacts of the three-tier architecture that I explained, that in engineering, from the AI applications to AI middleware to the AI models, between these three, there are various roles that get applied. Now, if you want to work as an engineer in this dimension, then there are certain basic things that I would suggest you to learn. Firstly, learn about certain programming languages like Python, for example, learn Java, for example. And then there are certain courses about statistics, learn those statistics courses. There are courses on data science, then learn those. Then there are libraries, open source libraries. I would suggest you to learn about them, like PyTorch, for example. LangChain. There are platforms that offer some courses like Coursera, etc. Go and research them, and even some hyperscalers like Google are offering some free courses where you can register and learn their generative AI courses. So basic understanding of a language model. Go and read the paper that Google wrote, Attention is All You Need, about their transformer architecture. These are some of the basic things I will suggest that you learn.
Thank you, Brijesh. There's one last question we'll take from Priya, which is, how are prompt engineers recruited in companies, and what is the roadmap to excel in this role? To an extent, you've already answered this, but if you want to add anything else.
Yeah, so who asked that question?
It's by Priya.
Okay. Priya, thank you for asking that question. The prompt engineer is someone who can ask the right question to a model so that the model can learn from that question and answer appropriately. That is the intent there, right? Who would be able to ask the question better? The person who knows that domain, that area. So say you're studying physics, right? So you know about Newton's law of motion quite well if you're studying physics, right? So you would be able to answer questions about the three laws of motion that Newton postulated. So that knowledge is the knowledge that is needed, that in the domain that you're going to be working, there would not be a generic prompt engineer. There will be prompt engineer associated with various domains of all the businesses of every aspect of our life that we know of. So my guidance would be that go deep, pick a domain or two or more, and go deep as you possibly can, and learn about it. Learn the techniques of prompt engineering, few shot, one shot. What do they mean? How to construct those prompts? How having prompts where you are asking open-ended questions versus closed questions influence the thinking of a language model. So those are the things I will suggest that you go and learn.
So Brijesh, there's a question that I've been thinking of. It might be relevant to everyone here. I think one thing that I think of is broadly there are technical skills and there are, let's call them soft skills, right? In that sense. So while we all have had this idea in a classic way of what soft skills are and so on, just would you be able to elaborate more on, like, because a lot of technical skills which people get paid for today, they are going to evolve essentially, and how they look like and what kind of day-to-day activities they look like, right? What do you think on the soft skill side? What is the impact of AI going to be, and which soft skills will shine through far more than ever before if you're good at them, just because you have access to powerful AI tools at any point of time? How is that going to evolve, especially in a large organization perspective?
That's a great question. So, Nivedan, I look at it slightly differently. The way I look at it is that the soft skills, in my humble opinion, are very limited. The way I classify them, one is ability to comprehend. And comprehension are two aspects of comprehension. One is when you read something, then how much of attention you are paying so that you understand what is written. Another one is listening. When you're hearing something, then how you comprehend what you're hearing. And the third one is visual comprehension, right? So, and there could be combination of all three. You're listening, hearing, reading at the same time, right? And then you're comprehending. So that is the most important soft skill, in my opinion, number one. Number two, once you comprehend it, then what do you do with that comprehension? How do you come back and propose what you are proposing based on that comprehension? You understood that situation, and you're coming out, and the situation may be a challenge, a business problem, area, whatever that is. Then you come back with a cogent response. You come back with not maybe just one response. You come back with options. You suggest alternatives. You suggest alternatives with pros and cons. That option A, I'm suggesting, will solve this problem, but here are the pros and here are the cons in going with option A. Then you suggest option B. If we go with option B, here are the pros and here are the cons of option B, right? And then the third most important soft skill is not just understand, not just suggest, but execute. Execute. You see through the execution of it. So in the world of AI, one must, regardless of what role, technical, hard technical, soft technical, regardless of what you're performing, any soft skill that you want to have, you must understand the concepts of AI, must understand to the lowest degree of detail that you can, even if you're not a technical person. Then the requirement would be, for example, if I can give you a real life example, many organizations today are struggling with the areas we discussed. That which model should I use? How many models should I use? Which business process of my business is most suitable for applicability with AI? Which business process is going to yield me maximum return on my investment? What skills do I need within my own organization for AI-enabled transformation? Where are my gaps on the dimensions of human skills, technical skills, business skills? So these are the gaps that exist. These are the gaps that a soft skill person can come in with all these gaps and address. So these are all the soft skill roles that are there available for one to develop knowledge and information on, expertise on, and go and help businesses with the areas of these gaps that I just talked about. These are all soft skills. There's nothing to do with technology.
Would it be fair, and I'm simplifying what you're saying, probably might lose some of the nuance here, but if I may, is it to say comprehension? Yes. Then being able to critically evaluate, critical thinking, then problem solving in terms of creative problem solving, being able to come up with options and suggestions and grapple with different possibilities. That is creative problem solving and critical thinking at play. Being able to articulate and communicate it with your other human team members and AI team members. I think that's a because and to communicate it to AI team members is prompting. To communicate with humans is the regular communication we've had. And then finally, I think execution, as you said, because execution can happen for further several dimensions. Do you really get the work done, right? Can you do it on time? All of those things which were always inherently valuable, I think they will shine. Is it fair to say like the importance of those are highlighted when a lot of the friction of the chores of doing work are taken away? Then the only differentiation remains at this level.
Yeah, and they are elevated, they are accentuated, those
Yes.
differentiate. They become more important because any error here will magnify and increase multifold errors somewhere else where you don't want that to happen, right? And that is called the whiplash effect in the supply chain process. That at the origin, if you have a minor fluctuation at the back end, the ripple effect can be much larger.
Right. And just to close one final because one more question was here, but I think I'll get a short response from you on this. A lot of people are worried about the moral implications of AI, and like as someone who's trying to build their career, people who are younger and earlier in their stage of career, right? Should they at any point, like I understand leaders being concerned about this when you're at your position. I understand you have a lot more challenges to deal with and so on. But people who are coming up, learning and building up their career in their early days, should any of the moral implications at a global scale or so on, beyond your personal ethical responsibility, should any of those be of concern to young people at all?
Not just to young people, Nivedan, the morality and ethics of AI should be of concern to all human beings.
If it's beyond my influence.
And I think at it slightly differently. I think everything is within my influence, regardless of whether I am directly or indirectly associated. So, for example, if I have a smart device and I have ChatGPT on my phone, and I go and ask ChatGPT a question, that is my moral responsibility to ask right questions to ChatGPT. If I'm asking wrong questions to ChatGPT, I'm teaching that system wrong things. I'm giving it wrong ideas. So at every level, there is a moral and ethical responsibility for all human beings. And we should be aware of that, knowledgeable of that, and hence act accordingly. And it is no different. This is no different from anything else we do in life. That's why when we are younger in elementary schools, we learn about moral science. We learn about, our parents continually teach about morality, and we enact and act and live on those every day in our life. We don't lie, we don't cheat, we don't steal.
Everyone is learning to think about this as a very serious concern, even in their individual capacities, and not just an organizational thing.
Absolutely. And as the evolution continues, with science and technology, we as human beings do put guardrails, do put regulations in place to protect us from the perils of the evolution, the negative consequences of the evolution that we can foresee. There are various things that we cannot foresee, right? But the things that we can foresee, there's conversation going on all over the planet that how do we protect ourselves with the adverse impact of artificial intelligence, and governments and organizations and individuals like you and I are taking steps every single minute of our life.
No, no, thank you so much. I think this, I appreciate this perspective. I'll hand it over to Nidhi again.